Manga is always something that I read from time to time, and I have read many different kinds of mangas that are from many different kinds of genres, but of course this also includes the dark and disturbing mangas as well. And that's exactly what I read quite recently when I read a manga that is called Sahaite ni Madao. Now, sorry if I mispronounced that wrong, my apologies, but in English it's actually translated to Lost at the Farthest End. And after reading the available chapters that are available, which is in total 6 chapters, I was at a loss for words as to what I read. This is probably one of those mangas that you really don't really know what to say other than it's a really messed up story. And of course, huge warning because this does include some very sensitive topics, so if you're not comfortable hearing or seeing these kinds of sensitive topics, then you have been warned, because this manga includes a ton of some very messed up situations. And also something that is also worth saying is how I am going to be spoiling a lot of things that happen in this manga, so if you don't want to get spoiled, then you have been warned, because I am going to spoil a few things that happen in this manga. So now that that's out of the way, let's just begin. So the main story overall of this manga is centered around our main protagonist named Kazuma, who has just spent 7 years of his life in prison. Now, the reason why he was in prison for 7 years was because he ended up taking someone's life as an act of revenge because of what this person did. And what this person did is just so horrible that you don't really blame him for what he has done. We get these panels in which it shows us a flashback of what Kazuma's life was like before all of this happened, and as it turns out, he was not the only child of his family. He in fact had a younger sister who goes by the name of Yuri. In these flashbacks, we get to see just how much of a deep relationship both Kazuma and Yuri have as brother and sister, and just like any other sibling relationship, you can tell that these two really do care for each other. And Kazuma really did care for his sister, as he would always pick her up after school, and you could see just how happy she was to see her brother. And Kazuma believed that this was going to be the lifestyle that he is always going to have, and one that he didn't mind all that much, because that's just how much he cared for his sister. But one day, he would find his sister in the most horrific way possible, and that is because one day he was going to her room and he saw her hanging, meaning that unfortunately she decided to take her own life. Now, of course, I can't really show you this panel because we're on YouTube, but yeah, it's a very messed up panel, and I can only imagine that anybody who has ever had to witness this is going to be traumatized for the rest of their lives. And that's exactly what Kazuma was experiencing in these moments, as he wanted to know why she did the things she did. And even before this all happened, there were actually some very subtle moments in which we see that there was probably something going on that Yuri never brought up. For example, there was a brief moment in their conversation in which she says that there is a creepy teacher in her school that is always having an eye on her. And of course, while this was mentioned, it was pretty much brushed aside as just simply somebody who was just a huge weirdo. But things escalated drastically, where one day when Cosmo wasn't able to pick up his sister Yuri from school, this is where the unfortunate happened. When Yuri came home that day, she was in a full state of panic and she clearly was in distress. At the time, Kazuma had no idea what was going on, and Yuri didn't reveal anything to him, and it was only until Kazuma found a note that she left behind in which it states that Yuri was assaulted by that creepy teacher that she mentioned before. Of course, there is another word for what happened to her, but I'm not going to say it because we're on YouTube. But yeah, Yuri was clearly so traumatized by these events that this led her to do the most tragic thing that anybody can do, and that is taking your own life. After this all happened, Kazuma was obviously in shock, but also he had nothing but rage inside of him. He clearly wanted to get back at this person for what they did to his sister, and one day he did just that. He states very clearly how he didn't really think too much of the consequences, and he didn't care if anybody saw what he was doing, because he wanted to get back at this person for what they have done. So he actually manages to find this teacher's address and decides to break into their house. At first, this teacher had no idea who this was, but when Kazuma states that he is Yuri's brother, this is where the teacher starts to panic and he clearly realizes what is about to happen to him, and in a last ditch effort to save himself, he decides to try to justify his actions, but this didn't do him any favors as this only just made Kazuma enrage even more, and this is where he viciously attacked him with a knife, stabbing him repeatedly until he was no longer alive. But unfortunately, Kazuma wasn't just the only person in that house. There was somebody else who also managed to witness what he has done, and that is sadly the teacher's own daughter seeing him do this action. And this is where he comes to the realization that he messed up, according to him, that he is now responsible for having so many people's lives ruined. When he's at the grave in which his sister was buried, he decides to make a promise to Yuri, saying that he is going to end his life soon and that he is going to meet with her very soon. But he wouldn't be the only person to visit his sister's grave, as there will be another girl that he has never seen before also came into Yuri's grave and paid her respects. At first, Kazuma had no idea who this person was or why she did what she did, but he would soon find out that this is actually the teacher's daughter. And as the things couldn't get more shocking, because his mother actually works at the orphanage that this girl is at, she actually created a good relationship with her, and she actually has plans into making her be part of the family, which of course shocks Kazuma because he was not expecting this outcome to happen. And at first he becomes worried and scared. This is all just some sort of plan that this girl has in order to get her revenge towards him, in order to avenge her father for what he has done. And while he seems to be very fine if she has some sort of revenge plan against him, he comes to the realization very quickly that that is not the case. This girl has no hatred towards him and doesn't want to get back at him for any particular reason, which of course is something that Kazuma is still puzzled because he finds it hard to believe that this girl may not know who he is or what he has done, but there's also that possibility that no one has really told her what has happened and why she is no longer somebody that has parents. We will also come to find out that this girl's name is Shika, and there are many things that she does and says that Kazuma, when he sees her, he is always reminded that she is very similar to how Yuri used to act and behave towards him, or how she always behaved in general, which of course is a dark reminder to him that Yuri is no longer in this world, and he wishes that she was still around so that they could both be together. And there's so many panels that greatly showcase just how broken Kazuma is after everything that has happened. Sure, he did get his revenge and the human trash is no longer alive, but this resulted in him not only losing 7 years of his life, but this also resulted in him just pretty much not knowing what to do with his life after being released from prison, other than just him trying to take his own life as well, as he feels that he no longer has a place in the world. And while he does still have his mother, he does still feel guilty because he feels that it's his fault that she went through a very hard moment in her life. She probably has had to deal with so much backlash against her for what her son did, and while he thinks that she is having a miserable life and has some hatred towards him, that is far from the case. His mother is still somebody that loves him and still views him as a son, and while she is fully aware of what he has done, she doesn't really seem to be mad or angry about the fact that he did what he did. After his release from prison, you can tell that she's trying to move on with her life, but also try to make her son be able to move on with his life as well, and to do things that he probably wishes he could have done much more sooner, but he couldn't because he was in prison. And one of the things that she hopes he's able to do is get along with Shika, because like I said earlier, she does have plans into making Shika part of the family. So if they both get along very well, then it's possible they can be one big happy family once again, the big happy family that they used to be before all this tragedy happened. But obviously Kazuma is still having a hard time dealing with all this, and even though her mother does try to make him feel comfortable and make him feel happy, he is clearly still struggling with his inner demons inside him. He's still contemplating on whether or not he should take his own life or not, but when he's just about to do it, there is somebody that's there to stop him from what he's about to do, and that is none other than Shika, who tells him that he shouldn't throw his life away just like that. and how she wants him to be by her side and to protect her. This of course makes Kazuma realize that maybe this is something that he could do. He could protect this person and be able to redeem himself by not only protecting Shika but also just spending time with her, just like how he was spending time with Yuri. At that point, his realization is that he is going to continue living just for her in order to take care of her and to be the big brother that he wished he was still doing with Yuri. And at this point, we see the bond between Shika and Kazuma start to grow. We see that they start to really care for one another. But of course, things aren't always going to be perfect, and sooner or later Kazuma realizes that Shika is also dealing with her own struggles as well, as it seems that she also has a few people who aren't huge fans of her either. It seems that there are some things going on in Shika's personal life that nobody really knows other than herself. Not only that, but it was also during this time that Kazuma comes to find out that Shika knew who he was even before they met. It seems that she was actually looking into the case that involved him and her father, confirming that even though she knew full well what Kazuma has done, she has no hatred or ill towards him and genuinely wants to have some sort of bond with Kazuma. And it's also during this point in the story that Kazuma is trying to move on with his life. He actually gets invited by his mother to go to a Christmas party with her as well as with Shika. And at first, Kazuma is clearly uncomfortable as he doesn't really know what to do in this Christmas party. But as time goes on, he eventually starts to have fun. And this is where Kazuma starts to realize that even though everything that has happened in his life isn't all that great, he can still spend a lot of time with the people that he does care for. He can still have fun and enjoy many activities that other people enjoy as well. But despite all this happiness being shown and seeing that Kazuma is able to smile happily once again, not everything is going to last long, since it was during this Christmas party that Shika and some of the people that don't like her got into some sort of altercation, which led to Shika actually hurting this person, leaving that person with a cut. And when Kazuma was there to witness all this, Shika panics and runs away, causing Kazuma to try to look for her before she gets into any other kind of danger. Of course, since this is winter, Kazuma is able to look for her very easily and sees that she went back into the cemetery. More specifically, she ended up being in Yuri's grave. When Kazuma sees her, he tries to talk to her, but it's very clear that she is not in the mood for talking. And when Kazuma suggests that she and the other girl that she fought with should have a conversation one-on-one, but this is where she lashes out to him, saying that he has no idea what is going on and he doesn't really know anything about her. Kazuma realizes that this situation isn't going to go nowhere and decides to come out clean, saying that he knows that she knows who he is exactly and the many actions he did previously. And this is where we get to see that Kazuma really is trying to have some sort of connection with this girl. And while at first she was hesitant, she comes out clean, saying that she does in fact know him and she does know what he has done, and states very clearly that she is the daughter of the teacher that he killed. Realizing that at this point there's no holding back, Kazuma states very clearly that he is very serious of them forming a new kind of family. Sure, it's going to take some time before they get used to this new lifestyle, but as long as they have each other, anything is possible. This of course leads to Shika going back to Kazuma to go to where everybody else is, and Kazuma once again stating that he is going to do whatever it takes to protect Shika. No matter what life may throw at them, he is going to make sure that Shika is protected at all costs. This is how he's going to atone for everything he has done. He is going to do the thing that he wasn't able to do with Yuri, and that is stay by Shika's side and to protect her if she's in any kind of danger. And that's so far the story of Lost in the Farthest Ends. Of course, there are other details I didn't mention, but I think this is pretty much the whole gist of the story. A story of a man trying to move on with his life after what has happened to him. A tragic story of a family trying to become a family once again, after everything they've been through. And of course, Kazuma and Shika, despite their history and despite it not being all that pleasant, they do try to form a bond with each other, knowing that this is the only way they can not only heal themselves, but with each other's company they could also heal each other as well. It's a very tragic story of just so many terrible things happening to so many people, that really is these kind of scenarios that nobody should really have to ever deal with. And it's something that, unfortunately, it's a very dark reality that these things do happen in the real world. Unfortunately, there is evil people in the world that do evil actions to an innocent person, and those actions not only affect that innocent person's life, but it also affects the people around them as well. It's a very sad manga, but it is a story that I am interested in seeing what happens next. Now, of course, there is only 6 chapters available that are fully translated, so only time will tell when the other chapters will get translated. But until then, that's pretty much my entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.